We're continuing to look at the end times that Jesus foretold in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. But this particular three parables were only told in in Matthew 25. And we have already looked at one of these parables, the parable of the 10 virgins, and the fact that we should all have a personal relationship with Christ and that we should be ready for his return. The second one in this chapter of 25 is the talents. Now, we got to be careful. Parables usually have one main point, and we should not read more into them than we ought to, nor should we read less. And here it's a man that calls his slaves together, and he puts them in charge of his possessions. In this case, he calls them talents. It's very tempting to relate this only to spiritual gifts and talents, but I think it's far more than that. It's everything that there is that's his. And to one he gives 5 talents, and to another he gives 2 talents, and to a third he gives 1 talent. Very interestingly enough, we have to understand that it says that he gave according to their abilities. He didn't give them equally, but he gave them based on their abilities, what he knew they could do with them. It says he was gone a long time, and the one that was given 5 talents traded and brought back an additional 5 talents so that he had 10. And the one that had 2 talents traded and did business, and when his master came back, he had 2 more, so he had doubled, just as the one with 5 talents had doubled. And when he had them give an account, it was quite interesting. The one with 5 talents that had now 10, he said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." To the one that had 2 talents and now had 4, he said exactly the same thing that he said to the one with 5 talents. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." Isn't it interesting? Even though he had brought back less than half of what the one with 5 talents did, he got the same reward, because remember, the master had given them according to their abilities, and each one had doubled what they were left with. However, the one that had 1 talent had gone out into the backyard and buried it. And so when the accounting came, his response was different. His response was, "I knew that you were a hard man. I knew that you reaped where you did not sow." Now, that doesn't describe our Lord at all. As a matter of fact, that's a good hint for us in this parable, that he really didn't know the Lord. He knew of him, but he didn't really know him. And the master said, "You should have at least put it in the bank." As a matter of fact, he kind of said it with tongue in cheek, because he said, "I know that you know that I'm a hard man." As if to say, well, if I'm really such a hard man, then wouldn't you at least earn the interest for me? But he didn't know the Lord. And now, what comes next is difficult, because if you take the word servant for all of these 3, you would assume that they were his people. But to this third who buried the talent, he says, "Take it away and give it to the one with 10. For everyone who is given and has more, more shall be given. And everyone who is given less, it should be taken away." Now, here's the troublesome part, verse 30. "And take this slave, who he calls worthless, and cast him out into the darkness with a weeping and gnashing of teeth." Now, every other place that we find those terms, darkness, weeping, and gnashing of teeth, It refers to hell. And so a lot of people struggle with the fact that he's called a servant in one place and that he's given a talent, and the other that it appears that he's going to hell. And I believe that that's exactly what happened here, but he's not one of Jesus' own. He doesn't even know him because he calls him a hard man. He calls him one that reaps where he doesn't sow. He doesn't know the Lord at all. So I don't have any problem at all with the fact that he is cast out and that he is in the place where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because you see, we're all his children, but we're not all going to be in his kingdom. And so we find that there's no real conflict here. But the warning is nevertheless the same. God expects us to do what we can with what we've been given. And he gives to us according to our abilities. And he expects us to fully use our abilities and all that he's entrusted to us. What kind of steward are you? Are you using everything that he's given you to the best of your abilities? Because if you are, likelihood is he'll give you even more because you were trusted with a little and you showed yourself to be faithful. And you can enter into his joy. But if you're one who has been given much and you're not utilizing that to the fullest of your abilities, there certainly is going to be time of an accounting. You won't be thrown into a place where there's darkness and weeping of gnashing of teeth, but certainly at the judgment seat of Christ, you will be held accountable for all you've been entrusted with. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.